7 years, you've done 140 million revenue.
Yeah, from a 30 grand startup.
Jay Bradley, entrepreneur and founder of the Craft Irish Whiskey Company, famous for selling the most expensive bottle of whiskey in the world.
2.8 million for one bottle. There was this poker game going on upstairs where people were betting big money. It had gotten to like day 2 of Monaco or day 3. One of our clients seen that with these guys willing to bet £1 million hands. One guy even went off to get a duffel bag of cash from a bank and came back on a helicopter and dropped in, 7 figures in this poker game. At the end of it, one of our guys talked to him and he said, yeah, I'm interested in buying it. Now all of a sudden we're officially the world's most expensive bottle ever sold, and then it just made global headlines after that.
Unbelievable.
In the 1800s, 84% of the world whiskey market was Irish, and around 4 or 5% was Scottish. Today, 4 or 5% is Irish and 80% is Scottish. To me, I was like, well, how did this 180-degree flip happen between this short period of time, like less than 100 years? I've been a millionaire since the age of 23, and now I'm 37, after having successful companies.
So you spent 14 years building your empire, and you're back to square one.
Went to the Dole office and they offered me €212 a week for a family of 5. And I'm like, I paid millions of taxes over the years to the Irish government, and now I'm getting €212. So that was tough. I'll never forget this day. I went for a big long run, and when I came back, I said, right, Dad, let's go. Let's design this business. So we sat at his kitchen table, and we basically mapped out everything that the company is today to build this empire that's worth 9 figures now from nothing, from zero. I'm hated in Irish whiskey by a lot of people, right? To make this brand successul, you put Irish whiskey back atop of the map. I also need really big collaborations, right?
Come on, this podcast is meant to be unfiltered.
So the first one was Michelin, and the second one was...
I'm Sam Vanderpump, born into a family of entrepreneurs. However, I'm forging my own path, running a foreign exchange brokerage, working with some of the biggest global brands. Each week, I sit down with the power players, innovators, and legacy builders in my network to uncover the bold moves, breakthrough moments, and behind-the-scenes grits that turn big ideas into filthy rich realities. Welcome to Filthy Rich, the podcast where money meets meaning and success leaves a story. This week, I'm joined by a man who doesn't just drink whiskey, he builds empires with it. He's the founder of Craft Irish Whiskey Company, the brains behind Whiskey and Wealth Club, the man elevating cognac with Le Portier, and an investor who could probably age a spirit just by staring at it. Welcome to Filthy Rich, Jay Bradley.
How are you, Sam?
I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
Very good, very good.
So let's take it from the top. How did we get here? How did we even start in whiskey? What was your first job?
First job ever. I left school at 14 to work in my dad's furniture factory. And then at night, I took a second job at 14 working in a bar. So I've always kind of been in hospitality. When I was 6, life story, my dad took me to America when I was 6, the whole family, and my mum and dad opened an Irish pub. So I kind of spent between the ages of 6 and 12 in a pub, then 14 back in Dublin working in a pub at night. And I've kind of always been in the hospitality space while doing business in the day. So it was always a normal thing to do 2 jobs.
Okay, so how did you go from, working for your dad's furniture store? What led you to creating, selling whiskey even at the first instance?
It was a long journey, and it's just every business that I did was kind of what led me into it. I gained different skills over the course of my career, and I never really knew that they would all turn into something that I could make into a whiskey business. It just kind of happened. So I've done, building businesses. I've been in hospitality. At one point in time, I've owned a restaurant. I was a chef. I was a barbecue cook at one point in time, competing internationally in those competitions. So I've done a lot of different things over the course of my career, always in a business capacity, always with a sales and marketing driven focus. And then just over time, I got to the point where I had kind of enough of the corporate world, so to speak. I had enough of building companies, which is odd because I ended up going back in and building a big company. But I kind of had enough of it, and I took some time off. I moved to a little island off the coast of New Zealand, and I opened up like a smokehouse. I was, just working a few hours a day, taking my daughter to school, living kind of a semi-retired life and enjoying it. And that was a great life. But then all of a sudden, I got a phone call from my father to let me know that he was sick terminally, and we didn't know how long he'd have. So I knew I had to sell up what I had there to move back to Ireland, I knew like if it was 6 months, it was 12 months, 18 months, whatever that was, I wanted every one of those months with him. So being in New Zealand and him being in Ireland made no sense. So I left New Zealand pretty abruptly. My wife stayed behind at the time, and with my daughter, me and my son went, and she went to sell everything up. And then what happened after that was kind of the worst thing, because when I got back to Ireland, we spent some great time together, me and him. And I was like, well, what am I going to do now? I guess I'm in Ireland. We're not going back to New Zealand anytime soon. What will I do business-wise? And I didn't want to get back into owning a restaurant or hospitality. So I said, well, I'd love to be able to service that industry, right? Guys would come into me selling me bottles of tequila, bottles of whiskey, different things like that, bottles of wine. And they had a great job. It was a day job. I'd love to be able to manufacture a product. I was always into that from a creative standpoint. And being a mixologist and a chef, I kind of had all those skills sitting there. And I said, you know what? I always wanted to own a vineyard, which is the purpose of moving to that island off the coast of New Zealand. It's a great wine growing region. That was always something I wanted to do. I'd been a somm in the past. I just love wine. And I love whiskey too. And when I opened that bar in New Zealand and that restaurant, I had a bit of a strong whiskey selection because we were doing barbecue and it paired really well. So when I got back to Ireland, I was like, well, we don't grow grapes here. And I do want to get into manufacturing a product. I'm not going to go down to France because I need to be with my dad. But what do we make great in Ireland? Whiskey. So I was like, okay, well, I know it's either going to be whiskey or wine for me. So I'm going to go head on in on whiskey. And that's really how it all kind of stemmed. I'm back at home with my father, going through the last months that he's got left to live. And I just decided to start a whiskey company. And he said, well, son, I'll jump in with you and I'll kind of jump along for the ride. And he was a great businessman, showed me a lot of the ropes for years. So it's kind of me and him that's just started off together during the last few months of his life, where I just started planning to build a whiskey company.
Wow. So it was kind of a life or, it was a life or death call with your dad, and which drew you back to Ireland. And then did you start selling the whiskey first, and you were involved in the sales side before you started creating?
It's a great question. So here's what happened. So we put everything up for sale in New Zealand, the restaurant and the bar and everything like that. And I was expecting multiple seven figures to come in. I was going to use that to start it. And over time, my wife's now there, ex-wife now, still very good friends, but wife at the time, she's back there trying to get it sold. And deal kept falling over, and we're getting closer and closer to the summer. Now, to understand, this island is a seasonal location, kind of like an Ibiza, but not a party zone. But like, you're only really making money in the summer season. You're not making it outside of it. So we'd carried it all the way through the winter, and it really, depleted our resources. And then you make all your money in the summer. So we were quite low on cash flow at this stage after only having it for a year, plowing all our money into it, renovating it, building it, and then carrying it through this winter, and then having to sell it. So all the deals kept falling over. And all of a sudden, she got to the point where she's like, look, how long has your dad got? He's my friend too. She's known him for 17 years. My daughter wanted to see him. It's her grandfather. So I said, look, just take the next deal that's on the table and come back. And the only deal on the table at the time was a guy saying, I'll give you a 10 grand deposit for the keys. I'll operate it through the summer. I'll pay you, 400 grand a month all the way through the summer to get to the figure that I owe you. And it was the only deal. And I said, look, just take it. So we got the 10 grand deposit, gave him the keys. She flew back. And then the first tranche never came. Now, I put in the contract that we could take it back. But by the time we got people involved to try and get it back, the lawyers, police, everything like that, it had already gone a couple of months into the summer. He'd run up loads of bad debt with all of our creditors that he never paid. So by me going back to take it back, it was so far underwater, it would have taken me about 2 years to trade out of it. So my decision at that point was, do I fly back to New Zealand, lose the last few months with my father, or just let this go and have no money and sign on the dole? And that's the decision I made. So I signed on the dole.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'd been a millionaire since the age of 23 when I started my first company, and now I'm 37 after having successful companies, building them, some failures, some losses.
So you spent 14 years building your little empire. You made yourself into a self-made millionaire, and now you're 37 with a daughter, a dying father, and you're back to square one.
3 kids. I got 3 kids. So I got a daughter at the time. I'm trying to think what age she was, but I was 20. She's 23 now, so we're going back to 2018. This was, so we're going back 7 years. So I got a daughter, son, and another daughter. And a dying father. So I go back. I sign on the dole. It was a bit of a.
How do you do that? That must hurt.
Tough.
I mean, you've gone from being so self-sufficient to
I've gone
now
from kids being in private school, living in a big house, multiple cars in the drive, selling all that up. And then utilising that money to get back. I pawned off, my watch that I had, a couple of my watches, and got back, put some money aside so I could basically get going and bring us through the next few months until that place sold, but it never sold. So I lost everything. So it was just a tough time because my mum and dad had, you know, a little 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom. My mum and dad are in 1 room. My sister is still living at home and she's in the other room. And now me, my wife and 3 kids all have to go into the other room. And then all of us share 1 bathroom after coming from a different life. So it was very humbling, but this is, you know, it is what it is. The hardest part, to be honest, was, you know, when I went to the dole office and they offered me €212 a week for a family of 5. And then there was other people in there getting like 600, like refugees that were coming in, and they were smaller families. And I'm like, I paid millions of taxes over the years to the Irish government, and now I'm getting €212 to feed a family of 5 without a home, without anything. So that was tough. That lasted about 10 or 12 weeks until I could figure everything out. So, you know, there was a bit of depression. There was times I just didn't even want to get out of bed. I had to figure out what I was going to do. And that's kind of when it came to me. I knew I wanted to do whiskey. And I remember, I'll never forget this day. I went for a big, long run, longer than I kind of normally would even be able to run with my fitness level at the time, right? But it's just one of those days. I had lots of energy. I needed to get it out, had to think, didn't even use earphones or listen to music. And when I came back, had a shower, felt fresh, went down, I said, right, Dad, let's go. Let's design this business. Let's make sure I'm going to get, like, I just was ready to fix it, yeah? So sat down, we sat at his kitchen table, and we basically mapped out everything that the company is today. The whole thing from start to finish. The reason why I built Whiskey Well Club, to become a cash cow, to feed money into the Craft Irish Whiskey Company, to feed money into other brands, to diversify, to build this empire that's worth, you know, 9 figures now, from nothing, from zero, being on the dole in the last 7 years. So that's a crazy story of that growth. It was nuts.
So you knew what you want to do. You're back to square one. You knew you wanted to create your whiskey. You wanted to do it with your father. It was your dream of both of yours.
Yep.
And the way you were going to do it was by selling whiskey. You were going to fund the operation by selling whiskey, which is Whiskey and Wealth Club today, right?
Yeah, so I had to think. I was like, I didn't want to do an investment business at all. I'd been in, you know, I'd sold software in the past for the investment space. I didn't really love those businesses. I always wanted to do something more creative, which is why I wanted to create a bottle of whiskey and sell a bottle of whiskey. Like, I wanted to get into that world where I could really dial in my palate that I had as a chef and as a mixologist. And yeah, I just loved craft Irish whiskey. The bottled whiskey business was what I really wanted to do. But I didn't have any money for it. I was expecting 7 figures to come from the sale of the business in New Zealand, and it didn't come. So I was like, well, how do I start a whiskey brand without any money for bottles or liquid or manufacturing or anything? So then we come up with the idea, me and my dad, purely because we'd been driving to different distilleries in hope of that money coming from New Zealand, that we were going to buy bulk liquid from different distilleries, because we definitely didn't have the money to build a distillery, but we could buy bulk liquid. So we knocked on the door of West Cork down in Skibbereen, and met with him, and he said, yeah, I can sell you bulk liquid and here's the prices. I was like, okay, great. And he goes, I've actually got 1-year-old and 2-year-old and 3-year-old as well. I'm like, oh, this is brilliant. And he showed me the prices of all of them, and I could see the price of new make being 0 years old and the price of 3, 4 and 5 years old and how it scaled up. And that was interesting to me, right? So then we went to another one, a Great Northern Distillery up in Dundalk, and it was very similar as well. He had up to like 3 and 4 and 5 years old, I think, at the time, because I think he started distilling in 2015. So maybe he had 3 and 4 years old. And again, price list was very similar. So when me and him sat down, it kind of just came to us, it was like, hang on a sec. If it's this price at 0 years old and it's this price at 5 years old, you could buy it in bulk at 0 years old, get a really good deal, put a margin on it, stick in 5 years of storage and insurance, sell it to someone, and when it gets to 5 years old, they can exit and they can make a profit. So the distillery makes a win by making bulk spirit and selling some of it to me, because obviously all these distilleries, specifically the likes of West Cork, made whiskey, sold a percentage off the stills to cover their running costs, while the rest of it went down to become into a bottle later, because in whiskey, it's a capital intensive model. You're putting lots of money in today, but you can't really make anything from it for 5, 6, maybe up to 10 years until it goes into bottle. So some distilleries will create a vodka or create a gin. Some of them will sell some of their casks of whiskey. So with this idea, I was like, okay, I can buy these whiskey casks, put a margin on it, sell it on to a customer, and then the customer can sell it on in 5 years or 10 years or whatever, and also make a margin. So it's a win here for the distillery, it's a win for us as the middleman, and it's a win for the customer. And I was like, this is, if I can get the matrix right here on what we're paying for it, to what we sell it for, to what it's going to cost through acquiring the customer from sales and marketing perspective, this could transform whiskey. This could be one of the best things ever. So that got me interested to know that I could get involved. So I got on the phone, started ringing distilleries, seeing if I could get terms, because I had no money to pay for it at the time. Got on the other phone and started, cold calling people to see if they're interested in buying whiskey, right? And then all of a sudden I married it up, and we got our first sale. So without really having any money in the bank, I think I got a loan off my sister for my investment because I didn't have any. And then I brought 2 other business partners in. They put a little bit of money in. We put less than 30 grand in, between 30 and 40 grand in to start it. And now last year we did, in one of them, just in Whiskey and Well Club, we did just shy of 30 million in revenue.
Wow.
We've done over 140 million in revenue since incepting the company in 2018.
And how long ago did you start Whiskey and Wealth?
Late 2018. I started working on it mid 2018.
So in 7 years, you've done 140 million revenue.
Yeah, from a 30 grand startup. Yeah.
Fuck me. And that all started from you cold calling and
Yeah.
selling to people over the phone a whiskey investment, by saying whiskey is going to appreciate, hopefully, and
Exactly.
so forth.
Exactly.
Wow.
Well, I knew the price of what these guys were selling it at 5 years old. So I knew that there was a market, there's going to be an exit for them somewhere. And maybe it's us that exits them, which in a lot of cases we want to do that, is buy it back and then, resell it on or bottle it. The reality is in whiskey, the money's in the bottling, right? So when you go to bottle it, depending upon the brand, when it goes in the bottle and you're selling that out into the market, that's where the true profit is. So when whiskey finally comes out of cask in the bottle, you make even more margin. So for us, building the Craft Irish Whiskey Company into a luxury brand, we knew there's always going to be an opportunity for us to help exit people because we want that whiskey, right? We want to buy it back and we want to put it into that brand after I get a chance to craft it into something great.
How did you move from salesman to craftsman, or why did you move from salesman to craftsman? But that was actually always the goal, to be the craftsman. The salesman was just the tool to get there, right?
Yeah, I think with everyone, right? So if you're giving business advice to anyone, the first thing I always say to people is learn sales and marketing. It's the first thing my dad said to me is like, learn sales and marketing before you do anything properly. Like, become the best salesperson in a sales company, become the best marketer in a marketing company. Because when you've got those 2 skills and you're very good at them, you can do anything. Sales transitions into any company, into anything that you want to do. So does marketing. You can do it in any industry. So then the craftsman side of it was like, my father was a craftsman. He was a chef. He was a furniture maker, a master craftsman. So when I left school at 14 to do furniture making, I learned the craftsmanship of that role. While at nighttime then, if I wasn't working in the pub, I was jumping in the van with him to go out and watch him do estimates to bring in business, go into people's homes and pitch them on why they should reupholster their couch or fix their table or chairs or whatever it might be and win business. So I could always see the sales side from him. I could see the craftsman side from him. And then over the years, I just kind of rolled that into the things that I was passionate about, which of course was, food, alcohol, those types of things.
And speaking of your dad, he wasn't just your inspiration. He was a bit of a jokester as well. He went a bit viral at one stage.
Yeah. So, about a year before he died, we were sitting around and he recorded essentially him when he knew he was going to pass. He knew he was sick, right? So he recorded him like knocking on the coffin, "Let me out, I'm still here." And he was saying, you should play this at the funeral. And then we forgot all about it. And then the night before the funeral, we're sitting there in the kitchen, me and my brother and my mom and my sister, and essentially had an open coffin. And before we allowed all the neighbours and family and friends in, it was just the immediate family. And I remember getting this like chill up my spine, and my brother at the same time. We both looked at each other and we're like, "The recording." He goes, "The recording." I was like, "Come outside." I says, "Okay, how are we going to do this?" I go, "Do we play it tomorrow?" He goes, "Well, we have to tell Mum about it." I'm like, "Yeah, she'll jump in on top of the coffin if she hears him knocking, thinking that he's in there." Because we knew we were going to bring a speaker along. I was like, right, so we tell Mum, but we tell nobody else. Don't tell with 2 sisters, don't tell them, we tell nobody, right? So we told my mum about it, and she goes, "Oh, no, you can't do that." I said, "Mum, we have to." We recorded it. He wanted it. It's like a dying wish. We're doing it. And she goes, "Right, okay. Well, then I'm giving you the cue and when you can." I'm like, "Okay, no problem. You can give us the cue, but we're doing it." So we brought up one of those little speakers and put it down, hit it, and had it ready to go. And it was actually my wife had my phone. And I gave it to her. I was standing there. You'll see me in the video. I had darker hair at the time, a little bit fat because I'd been drinking a lot at the time. Going through the emotions of losing your father. I was on the piss a lot. So you'll see me in the video, right? And boom, the bagpipes just finished playing because my dad was half Scottish, right? Half Irish, half Scottish. And we pressed play on the thing, and then it was never supposed to go viral. It was never supposed to be shared with anyone, really. It was just, there was a lot of people that didn't make the actual funeral. And there was a WhatsApp group that was set up called Dad's Pics. And it was basically a WhatsApp group I set up with everyone that knew him to say, "Give me all the pictures that you have of my dad." And then I made this video for that. And when we were in there, people were still messaging during the video saying, "Jay, throw in the video of your dad. None of us have seen it." So I dropped it in there, and then someone in there shared it with someone who shared it with someone. And when we woke up the next morning, I had the worst hangover ever. And all of a sudden we're getting phone calls from everyone. It had a couple of million views within a few hours. It started originally being shared on Facebook. Then before then, people were sharing it on YouTube, and it got shared in other places. We got phone calls from my God, Japanese TV, Australian news, Fox News in America, like, and it was that viral at the time. It was insane. It was just one of those crazy things that for 2 weeks after his death, we didn't even get a chance to properly mourn. We were just fending phone calls from news agencies.
How many views did it end up getting?
It's hundreds of millions across different platforms. Yeah, we're told somewhere circa 400 million across all the different platforms that it was on and the different videos where it is.
Did that video just encapsulate what your dad was all about?
Exactly. It was just his personality. He was the light of every room that he'd go into. He was always the funniest guy in the room. He was always lighthearted and jokey. You know, he could be serious when he wanted. And when we were kids, he raised me really well in a sense that everything was strict. And as soon as I turned 18, he's like, look, I'm your mate now. I'm not your father. You know what I mean? We're going to go and have drinks. And that's kind of the way it always was with him. We became best mates from the age of kind of 18, 19 onwards. But before that, he was ridiculously strict, but always a funny guy with his mates, always up for the crack. And you could tell in the video, you know, there he is knocking on the coffin. Let me out. I'm still here. I can hear you crying. Stop crying. Just open the coffin. It's like he was just one of those guys that cracks good jokes. You know what I mean?
If you're going to end, you know, go out with making people laugh, right?
And that was it. It was called Shay's Last Laugh. We even, you know, it's what it was. He always joked about it. He called himself Famous Seamus, right? He would always joke about it. Yeah, one day I'll be famous. It's like, well, you wear that. It was just after you went, you know what I mean? Unfortunately, but he was a good man.
This episode is sponsored by one of my businesses, Vanderpump FX. If you're a business sending or receiving money from abroad, contact us. Most banks and providers overcharge you on the exchange rates. At Vanderpump FX, we can help businesses and individuals like you save on every transaction. With savings up to 5% compared to most banks. We make sure your money stays where it belongs, in your pockets, not the bank's. What was the purpose of craft Irish whiskey? Why did you start it? What did you want to create?
Yeah, I'll try not to give the longest answer here, but here's the thing. When I had that place in New Zealand, and I remember looking at my back bar, I was guilty of it, and then I started seeing it everywhere. And what it was I had about 12 to 15 Scotch, about 8 or 9 bourbons. I had 2 or 3 Japanese, and I had 2 Irish. And everywhere else I went, max had 1, maybe 2 Irish. And I was like, how is this? I knew the Irish invented whiskey. Why are we so underrepresented in the market? And I ended up finding this book called The Truths About Whiskey, written in like 1879, for want of memory. It was sometime in the 1870s, by John Jameson III, his cousin William Jameson, George Rowe from Rowe & Co., and John Powers. And these guys wrote this book about what was going on in whiskey at the time. And I realized that Irish were the biggest. Now, at that point in time, in the 1800s, 84% of the world whiskey market was Irish, and around 4 or 5% was Scottish. Today, 4 or 5% is Irish, and 80% is Scottish. Wow. So, like, to me, I was like, well, how did this 180-degree flip happen between this short period of time, like less than 100 years, or around 100 years? So it turns out in World War I, without going into crazy history here, because I know we want to keep this podcast not punchy, right? But this is extremely interesting. World War I happened, and the Irish couldn't set sail anymore to deliver whiskey because German U-boats were sinking passenger vessels off the coast of Ireland. So the waters weren't safe, so we couldn't distribute anymore. So when that happens, you got a lot of distilleries going bankrupt. They can't get their whiskey sold, right? And they couldn't really manufacture properly because a lot of the food was being taken to feed the soldiers fighting the war. There was other reasons. Scottish whiskey was starting to become on a rise because they were making cheaper alternatives, which was this blended whiskey where we were staying true to making pot still and single malts. And over time, by, you know, embargoes happened. When World War I finished, America went into prohibition. We couldn't export to that market, so we had another hit, more distilleries closed. World War II happened. And essentially, during World War II, the big switch in how Scottish whiskey became so popular was about 16 million American soldiers fought World War II. And they came over, and at that time, Irish whiskey was completely decimated. And we'd now fought for our independence, right? So we're no longer part of the crown. Well, who is part of Great Britain? Scotland, right? And they do make whiskey as well. Nowhere near in the volume we used to make it, but they still made whiskey. So of course, it's like fire up the stills, make as much whiskey as you can to feed these soldiers to get them through the cold nights. And one thing people don't realize about whiskey, when I got this tattoo for my father after he passed away, I'll never forget it. It was a cold November, late October, November. My father passed around, I think it was October 22nd. And it was about a week after that, just before his funeral. And I'll never forget, I'd been to the distillery that day in Dublin to pick up some new make, which basically looks like water, right? It's fresh off the still. And it was in my bag. Anyway, I'm getting this tattoo and I'm about 7 hours in. and it's cold. They've got the door open and people keep coming in. I got my top off to be able for her to get into it, and I started to uncontrollably shake, and I couldn't stop it. And she said, if you can't stop shaking, I can't finish the tattoo. You're going to have to come back next week because that's my next appointment. I said, no, it's my dad's funeral in 2 days. And I promised myself, over when he passed, when I was holding his hand, he had this funny this eagle with a sun behind it on his arm, and me and my brother used to tease him about it. So me and my brother promised over his body as he passed that we'd both get the tattoo. So I'm in there getting it, and I made a promise that I'd get it done. So anyway, I'm thinking, how do I stop shaking? Like, I can't. And I remembered I had the new make in my bag. So I went in, reached in, and I took a big swig of this new make, which is like 70% alcohol, right? And within 10 minutes, all shakes went away. Body was warm, completely comfortable. And it dawned on me, I was like, that's what whiskey was invented for. The name of whiskey comes from the word Ishkabaha. Ishkabaha is the Gaelic word for water of life. Now, eau de vie, which they call it in France, also translates to the word water of life. Aquavitae in Latin also translates to the word of water of life. In fact, all alcohol was called water of life. It was actually made as a medicine. It was never made to get drunk off. And it was to get people through that didn't have central heating through cold nights, right? You think of in Ireland, back then, people are living in big rock hovels, right? And they're trying to get through these cold nights. So whiskey did that. So long story short, when I'm sitting there and you got these 16 million American soldiers fighting World War II, they got to get through the cold nights. They all got a taste for the whiskey that was sent down to them, which was what? Scottish whiskey, right? When World War II was over, they all went back to America and they all had a taste for Scottish whiskey. Ireland didn't produce it anymore. We had a 99% share market drop from what happened between World War I and World War II. We got completely decimated. We couldn't trade, we couldn't operate, we couldn't finance ourselves. The whole industry dropped. So that 84% of the world market dropped to nothing. And Irish whiskey stopped being exported. And there was a whole worldwide market now available for Scotland to go and export to. And they did a phenomenal job. So when I knew all this information, and Scotland did such a great job with, you know, the Dalmores and the Macallans and all these great whiskies and the top shelves and the ultra premiums, and then they had these great mid shelf whiskies and these great bottom shelf whiskies. And I was like, in Ireland, all we had was really that bottom shelf whiskey, which was Jameson, that everyone in the world knew about. Of course, we had other ones like Middleton and Redbreast that we knew about in Ireland, but they weren't really known publicly around or globally around the world. So that's what the driving force was. You asked the question, it's a long answer to it, but the driving force was going around the world, lucky enough to have been, you know, wealthy from the age of 23 till 37, going to all these fancy restaurants, seeing that nobody was stocking Irish whiskey, knowing the history then and going, do you know what? If I'm going to do whiskey, I'm going to do whiskey to put Irish whiskey back atop of the hierarchy, put it back atop of the map. So I looked into what I needed to do to make a luxury, high-end, great quality Irish whiskey initially, because I wanted to get that space dominated from an Irish perspective, so people started speaking about Irish whiskey in that manner. So the first whiskey I released was a Devil's Keep. It went on to win the World Whiskey Award from Ireland for the #1 single malt from Ireland that year, which was in 2022, which was unheard of. To have your first whiskey go on to win the World Whiskey Awards for the best single malt was phenomenal. So that kind of put us on the map straight away. We were very expensive, so we got a lot of hate from the industry as well, because we came in with it. Our first bottle was 10 grand, right?
But you trump that, don't you, in the future?
We do trump that. But you got to understand, at that time, the most expensive bottle of Irish whiskey I ever saw was like 6 grand, right? And most people even thought that was too high, because people in Irish whiskey were like, no, we only sell bottles of Jameson. And everyone going into Irish whiskey at the time were all chasing the Jameson market. From what I could see anyway, they were all making, you know, these blended whiskies or these single malts, but selling them all sub 100 £100. So I come in and release a 10 grand bottle, big elaborate design done by Tiago Russo, probably the most beautiful whiskey you'll ever see. Put loads of different pieces into it, a lot of time, energy, and effort, and of course the whiskey was phenomenal, right? It went on to win the World Whiskey Award. So that was kind of the start of it all, how I got into it, why I did what I did, and the concept was to kind of build it from top down. If you look at like Tesla, for example, right? Like when Tesla released its first car, it was a supercar. Right, it was a fast sports car. It was a limited release. There was only so many of them. It made kind of electric cars cool, because at that point in time, people didn't really want electric, right? And then over time, he released a couple more, like the Plaid, like the fastest car around. And then eventually, you know, he's got one that rivals the Prius. And everybody would now, if you had a chance, if you were going to get an electric car that was, you know, 15, 20 grand, would you get a Prius or would you get a Tesla? Well, Tesla's kind of cooler than a Toyota, right? Or at least it is for a lot of people. So he's done a very good job of that. And when I got into my brand, I was like, you know what, if we can really establish this as an ultra premium brand, give phenomenal quality product, designed beautifully, marketed correctly, then eventually over time I can do what I really want to do, which is to release an affordable whiskey, something that is accessible, something that's sub 100, right? And that's the ultimate goal, and that's what I'm just on the precipice of doing. We're right there. For the last 7 years I've been working towards that, and we're about to release a whiskey that's around 90 a bottle. So that's the exciting part for me.
So you have the extravagance, you have the, you know, the basic bottle of whiskey, which is not basic, still a fantastic luxury bottle, but more affordable for the average consumer. But you go all the way up to now a £10,000 bottle, making the most expensive bottle of whiskey in the world.
We've broke that a few times. I'll circle back. So when I first got into this, I said, look, what are the top 5 things I want to achieve with this whiskey early before we do something mass market? And for me, like, I remember when I was in this place in New Zealand, in this bar and restaurant I had, and I remember a guy coming into me and bringing me this champagne, or he just brought me his whole list of it, and I wanted to stock the best champagnes, and he goes, have you heard of Billy Cart Salmon? I'm like, at the time I hadn't. I said, no, I haven't. He goes, try the rosé. He said, this is served in more Michelin star restaurants than any other rosé champagne. I was like, really? I was like, I never heard of it. And he goes, yeah, it's favored by the most Psalms. And I was like, wow. So then I stocked it. I then regurgitated the same information to anyone that came in. Oh, you should try Billy Cart Salmon. It's in more Michelin star restaurants. And I was like, that was a really strong selling tool. And I was like, I want to be in more Michelin star restaurants with my whiskey. That was one of them that I wanted. So I became the official whiskey of the Michelin Guide for Great Britain and Ireland. I then went on to achieve that, and we are now the most sold Irish single malted Michelin star restaurants in Great Britain and Ireland. That was one of the things we wanted to do. Then I was like, okay, I'd like to. One of the things in whiskey at the time was who sells the most expensive first release bottle at auction. So the very first bottle you ever release to market, what does it sell for? And initially, I think it was the Lakes Distillery did it, and they sold it like $6,000, and then it was broken by Teeling in Ireland at like 10 grand. Someone paid for their first bottle, and it all goes to charity, right? And then someone then broke it again, Nick Nean in Scotland, with like 40 grand. So I was like, it'd be great to hold that title. So we put it out to auction to see if we could beat it. We said we're donating it all to children's cancer. And there's a reason behind that. My daughter had cancer when she was younger, the oldest one. So we did it, we put it out there, and we sold it for 60,000. So we now hold the title for the world's most expensive inaugural release whiskey, and that was the Devil's Keep. So while we released it at 10 grand a bottle, the very first bottle that we released, which actually was bottle 17, and there was a reason for that, because it's a long story, but the charity that we donated to was by a guy called Carlos Correa, who's basically a Major League Baseball star for, at the time, the Houston Astros. And he has a really good foundation that helps families that when they've got a child that's sick with cancer, they allow the parents to stay home and look after. So they give them money so the father doesn't have to go to work. And why that resonated with me was when I was young, when I was like 23, the reason why I started my first company, the whole catalyst to all of this was that I met a girl, fell in love, she had a daughter. She wasn't biologically mine. She was about 1.5, nearly 2, and she had cancer. And she was going in and out of chemo treatments all the time. So I fell in love with the mother, the daughter as well at the same time. And I basically adopted her as my own. And then when her mother got pregnant with who is now our son, I was trying to get in and out and help a bit more and come in and out of the chemo treatments a bit more. And my boss kept frowning upon it, and he kept giving me shit for it. And I just got to the point, I rang my dad on the payphone. I don't even think I had a mobile phone then. And I rang my dad, and I was in Australia at the time when all this was going on. I rang him back on, and I said, Dad, this is getting too much. And he goes, son, you know what to do. If you want to start a company, I'll guide you, I'll help you, because he's always had his own company. So I'm like, yeah, it's time. I'm going to start a company. So basically trying to provide a better life for her and not have a boss telling me I couldn't go to chemo treatments was why I started the first company. And fast forward all these years later, there's a guy who's got a charity that literally gives money to those families that are in the situation I was in, where I didn't want to have to lose my job because I needed the money, right? So I said, okay, the first whiskey we ever sell, we're giving it to that charity. And then subsequently, when we sold the Emerald Isle, that you're talking about, the one that sold for 2.8 million, right? We sold it initially for 2 million. So I'll tell you that story.
I actually had a question before you go on to this story. Firstly, let's go back a little bit. What is it that makes a bottle of whiskey worth 2.8 million? Is it marketing or is it craftsmanship?
It's a blend of a lot of things. So to give you an idea where it all came from, when I said I wanted, to be in more Michelin star restaurants, I wanted, to be the most sold price point at auction. The next one was, well, could you be the most expensive bottle of whiskey ever sold? And that was like an extremely tall order. Like, is it possible? Should we be even that? Because Macallan's been around a long time, done very well, and they were that. They had just sold a bottle for 1.9 million at auction. Now, the bottle was an older bottle in a release of like 20 odd bottles, and I had an artist painting on it, so I had like something that made it more valuable than purely just the whiskey. I had like a label on it that was painted by an artist. So it was interesting to me. And at the time, I just hired Ian Dignan. And my first two hires was Ian Dignan and Tiago Russo. So if you're going to try and build a luxury brand, Ian came from a background where he was working for Fulham Football Club and whatnot, and he was doing a lot of the corporate sponsorships. Tiago was the world's #1 product designer. He designed some of the Macallan designs that I'd known of. So I said, look, Tiago, I want to hire you. And he goes, okay. He told me all the things that he wanted, and I said, look, granted, all of them. He goes, I want to leave London, I want to go to Portugal, I want to open an office, I want my wife to work with me, I want to, that's where he's from. So I gave him everything that he wanted, and he came and worked for me. He was my very first hire. Then Ian asked for what he wanted, I gave him it. So I got these 2 rock stars as my first 2 employees, which is key to building a good company. And I told Ian, I said, Ian, to make this brand successful, while I'm wanting to be in more Michelin star restaurants and I want, to be the most expensive whiskey, I also need really big collaborations, right? To be able to leverage essentially off other big brands, fame and fortune, so to speak. Fortune's probably the wrong word, but it's essentially their fame is to be able to do collabs. We've seen what Supreme did. They did a phenomenal job of doing collaborations in other brands. So I brought Ian in, and he was tasked with that. So the first one he went to was Michelin, and he got us in there. And the second one was Faberge. So we got a meeting with Faberge. I come in with this idea, and it just so happened that they were looking to do something around that time, or try to do something with this rare Cognac, I believe, and it just never came to fruition. They had these beautiful boxes, and it never came to fruition. So I said, look, I'd love to do it. Showed them the design, showed them the idea, and they said, yeah, look, we're open to it, right? So Tiago went away and started doing more designs, really dialing it in. And what we were going to do at the time, we weren't even going to do an egg, and we certainly weren't going to try and be the most expensive whiskey in the world. That was still in the back of my head, that I'd love to do it one day, but I didn't think I was going to do it at Faberge. I felt we need a few more collabs, and then eventually. And then here's where it all changed. I was in Ireland doing what I do for work, which is going, when I'm back in Ireland, I go down to the barrels and I spend a day or two down there, sometimes more. And I'm opening up barrels every day and tasting from them, different barrels from different corners of the warehouse, and then I'm scoring them, right? Now, I've got a specific scoring system that I developed over years prior to starting a whiskey company, when I had a YouTube channel where I'd be scoring whiskeys with my mates, right? And we'd put it out on YouTube. It was called the Craft Whiskey Boys, right? It was from, I don't think we've done a video for like 4 or 5 years. We are thinking of bringing it back, but that's not to plug it here because we haven't decided to bring it back. But the Craft Whiskey Boys, I would score whiskeys, and I was really good at tasting a whiskey and knowing where exactly it was at. With my scoring system. So I'm going through the barrel warehouse, and I come across this little barrel, this little 40-litre barrel, and when I opened it up, it had hyper-evaporated down to 20 litres. I'm like, all right, it's 20 litres of liquid here. I tasted it, and it just sat me on my arse. I was like, it's the highest score of a whiskey I've ever tried. I've tried over 3.5, maybe 4,000 whiskeys over time. Like, I'm trying sometimes 20, 30 whiskeys a day, tasting through my stuff, let alone the stuff I drink outside of work. And this was by far the highest score I'd ever given anything, by a large margin. Like, nothing's ever got past like a 9 or 9.1 for me. Like 9.2 is like, these are all unicorn, like the best whiskeys anyone's ever had. This was up closer to 10. Like, this is up above like 9.5. This was unreal. And I was like, wow. So I called Yusina. I said, look, I've got 20 litres of this stuff, which means I could probably make around 7 bottles if we give them an extra bottle. Because the thing that irked me about the Macallan 1.9 million sale was, I was like, it's such a shame that guy's never going to open that. Because who's going to open a 1.9 million pound bottle of whiskey? He's never going to drink it. He's just going to sell it on for maybe 2.5, and someone's going to sell it for maybe 3. So I was like, if someone buys my whiskey, I want to give them a bottle to drink and let them keep the bottle for investment purposes. So I rang Yusina and I said, look, I don't want to do like a little egg pendant anymore. I don't want to do something for, that's, 100 grand or whatever like that. I said, I want to shoot for the stars. I want to sell something and beat Macallan's record of 2 million or 1.9 million. I want to sell something for 2 million or above. And she goes, why? What's changed? I said, I've found a whiskey that generally merits it. Now, I don't know how good this 1.9 million whiskey from Macallan is, or other whiskeys for that. I've never tried it. But what I do know is there's no way it could be next to near as good as this, right? Because it was made back in the 40s. It's been sitting in a bottle for a while. This was genuinely the best whiskey I'd ever tried. So I was like, look, I know I've got the best whiskey on earth, and I know if someone pays 2 million for it and they get to taste it, they're not going to be upset. It's that good. And of course, I get in a bottle as an investment. So I said, I want to shoot for the stars and create an egg. I said, and not just any type of egg. Now, I had an hour's walk after I tasted the whiskey to think of all this. I walked down by the beach and then I gave her a call. I said, I want to make a Celtic egg, an egg from Ireland, a Faberge egg from Ireland. She's like, right. And I'm like, and I want to put an uncut gemstone inside. She goes, why uncut? We've never done that in the history of Faberge. She goes, we've never ever put uncut gemstones inside. I said, because I don't know if the man's going to want to take what's inside the egg when it opens up. Because if you just put jewelry in there, what if he doesn't like that piece of jewelry? I was like, at least he could take the stone into Faberge and fashion it into a ring for himself or earrings for his wife or whatever it might be. She goes, oh, that's a great idea. Okay, we're on board with that. So we basically got the first ever egg made from Ireland, the Celtic egg. It's a 7-piece collection. We decided to do it on the 7 wonders of Ireland. So you're talking about like the Blarney Castle or the Cliffs of Moher or, you know, the Halfpenny Bridge or any of these beautiful things of Ireland, the Giant's Causeway. And we made a 7-piece collection. Everyone is different into the other. There's a different type of gemstone. It's all got the geo-coordinates of the place on each box. Each design on the front of the box is different. The bottle was modeled after the original hen egg. It's encrusted in emeralds. The emeralds inside it. It's just a magnificent piece. And most importantly, the whiskey inside it is the best whiskey in the world, in my opinion, that I've ever tried. And I've been in whiskey a long time. I've tried a lot of them. So that was the whole purpose of it. So I said, let's take it to a few different places and see if we can auction it off. And that particular charity was the one I wanted to give the proceeds to, which was the charity that helped families that weren't around for me at the time, but, you know, will be around for many more. So I was like, if we can sell this for 2 million, we can give the money to this charity. So that was the whole purpose. And that was the reason for going for 2 million. And then when we did that, then the rest of them were obviously for sale to the market, and then we've since sold one for 2.8, and that was just to a customer. That wasn't for charity. That was literally someone paying 2.8 million for that whiskey, a guy called Mike Daly.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So when I asked the question, what goes into a 2.8 million bottle of whiskey? A lot, right?
A lot, yeah. So many designs, so many revisions of designs. There's a one-of-a-kind watch in there from Faberge with the original Faberge movement. It's a one-of-one because basically what's on the front of the whiskey, of the bottle, is a geometric design of if it's the Cliffs of Moher or the Giant's Causeway. So that's a one-of-one design. That design is then on the face of the watch. So it's a one-of-one watch. It's a one-of-one egg. And then there's the rarest cigars in the world as well in the humidor below. So it's cigars that, you know, have sold out a long time ago. They're scored 100 out of 100. So you're talking the best whiskey in the world, the best cigars in the world, a one-of-a-kind watch, and a Celtic egg where there's only 7 of them in existence.
Wow. I mean, I've actually tried the whiskey, and it was unbelievable. It was like, and I'm not a whiskey drinker when I used to drink, but it was. I mean, yeah, it blew me away.
It's exquisite.
And then when you consider all the other factors, I can understand. Am I right in saying that when you had this astronomical sale of a bottle of whiskey, you actually had some hardship over that? Am I correct in saying that with one sale? Does that happen?
With that one, it wasn't that difficult. The 2.8 million sale wasn't so much. The client was a good client of ours. He came to Monaco. We it wasn't last year, a year before. We had our boat. We co-shared a boat actually with there was a poker company that was on board. Were you there that time? Did you ever come to the boat?
No, I wasn't there, and I wish I had been there because I know you had Conor McGregor on your boat, which is got to be one of the coolest
came on that day.
things
Eddie
ever.
Jordan come on. Michael Flatley come on that time. Michael Flatley's a great guy. He's launching Irish whiskey actually. So they and God rest Eddie. So he was an amazing guy. So Eddie, they all come on the boat and, you know, it was just one of those fun times. We had a lot of cool Irish people on the boat. There was this poker game going on upstairs where people were betting big money. It had gotten to like day 2 of Monaco or day 3. And one guy even went off to get a duffel bag of cash from a bank and came back on a helicopter and dropped in, you know, 7 figures in this poker game. And when one of our clients seen that with these guys willing to bet big money, like £1 million hands, and then we're selling a bottle, I think for him, he just seen the rarity of it. And he's obviously a wealthy guy. He's done well for himself. And he was on the boat. He'd listened to me have do a whiskey masterclass. And at the end of it, one of our guys talked to him and he said, yeah, I'm interested in buying it. So he did. He bought it. He transferred the money. It was transaction was done. We were blown away. We were like, wow, 2.8 million for one bottle. And then it just made global headlines after that.
Is there a moment where you pinch yourself, where you have to go, hold on a second, when you see a transfer come in for 2.8 million for, I mean, obviously the product you built is spectacular, but it's got to be a pinch me moment,
Big
right?
time.
When you see a 2.8 million
2.8 million
transfer
hits you, $2.8 million, whatever that translated to in euros at the time, was like, wow, that's a serious transfer to hit the account. I mean, we do well as it is as a company anyway, but that is just, now all of a sudden we're officially the world's most expensive bottle ever sold, most expensive inaugural bottle ever sold, and more Michelin star restaurants, all the things that I wanted, but they were just really things to bring the brand to where it was or where it is now. But really, again, like what I'm genuinely passionate about is releasing this whiskey that's like, we got one that's around 180 a bottle called the Don. It's the highest awarded Irish single malt of the last couple of years by way of awards that it's gone in for, to the medals that it's won. So over, I think it's 62% of everything it's gone in for, it's won the gold medal, which is unheard of, given that its age is only 7 years old, and it's going up against everything in the ultra premium category because of its price point. So the Don's like 180, and then I'm releasing another one called the Turf Cutter at the end of this year that's only like 90. And those are the ones I'm super excited about, because people get to drink them, they get to try them, they get to see what my whiskeys taste like, because obviously not everybody can afford a 10 grand or 20 grand bottle of whiskey. So I'm excited about that one.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see it. I mean, actually, one of the biggest things you mentioned earlier is, obviously, with all of these record-breaking moments, the heights, the huge thing you produced, you've come out of this and you've done this in a relatively, in the whiskey market, a short amount of time, I think is fair to say, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And, with that, you're going to have 90% of people which are happy for you, support you. But as we all know, in this world, there are the critics, there are the haters. How do you deal with that?
Oh, we get loads of them. I got more haters in Irish whiskey than anyone in history, I think. I mean, really, genuinely, I'm hated in Irish whiskey by a lot of people, right?
Why do you think that is?
I come out of the gate with a 10 grand bottle of whiskey, I've doing Monaco yachts and private jets and all this stuff, and just the Irish people just don't like that, right?
Well, you're just going against the typical Irish person.
100%. Like, they just didn't like it. But the thing is, my awards and my whiskey speak for themselves. We're, at this stage now, I think it's 72% of everything that we've gone in for all of our whiskies across the board, including design and taste, has won the gold on any competition it's gone in for. The World Whiskey Awards, the San Francisco Awards, John Barleycorn, all the top awards in the world. So look, the awards will speak for themselves, but there's going to be a lot of hate. We're flashy, we're this ultra luxury Irish whiskey company. People don't think that Irish whiskey should be ultra luxury. It's like, I know it should be, because I know it was for hundreds of years prior. Do you know what I mean? When you look at the history books and you read it, Irish whiskey, if you were an aristocrat or someone of wealth back in the 1800s, you weren't drinking Scottish. It wasn't even exported really then. You were drinking Irish whiskey. We were so why can't we be again? So to me, I got a lot of hate because I came in very, very abrupt in a lot of ways. But look, we're still here and we're still doing what we need to do. And we're putting Irish whiskey on the map in a good way. We're putting it in as a people in Irish whiskey should be happy for it, right? I'm happy for everyone that enters the Irish whiskey market, no matter what market they're going in at, bottom shelf, top shelf, mid shelf, it doesn't really matter. And the reason why is every entrepreneur that comes into the market is hiring salespeople, and they're trying to sell their product, and they're going out and telling a great story that's good for Ireland, it's good for whiskey, it's good for expansion of Irish whiskey. So why would anyone hate anyone else in Irish whiskey? You should be excited that someone else is going out and spending millions on marketing and spending millions on salespeople and knocking on loads of doors around the world to put that whiskey everywhere, going into Michelin star restaurants. They should be happy for it. I'm happy for anyone else that does it.
I think the sad thing about this world is the critics, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, so obviously we talk about all these milestones that you hit, the records you break, the things you've done with the companies. What do you reckon it is that drives you individually? What is it that makes you want to go for the next record, that makes you want to go for the next milestone, create something more luxurious?
Because I think I see craft Irish whiskey as being a legacy brand that's around when I'm gone. Right, and to get it there, there's all this work that has to be done now. There is releasing these 90-pound bottles that need to go all across the world, right, to be able to generate the revenue, because you have to have those products, right? You have to have the high-end products, and getting it into all the places, setting records, they're all important. Winning gold medals, setting records is really what sets your brand apart from anything else. So for me, it's just, I have a grander vision that it's going to be around after me. So I've got the time right now, the energy to do the work today to make sure that happens. So that's really what drives me, is to make sure it's around.
And would you say there's anything else in the sense of, like, the reason I ask is that, do you think it's like your kids, your dad? Do you think that's all a contributor to it?
I think my dad and the kids are huge. My dad's probably the bigger one. Is that, like, obviously we did this together, we started it together, and he's no longer here, right? So I'm the one that gets to carry that torch. And that's a big responsibility on my shoulders. So I have to make sure that I do it. I've got to carry that through. I can't just walk away from it, right? And then, of course, you got your kids. I've got 4 children. They're not relying on me per se. Like, my daughter's doing good for herself now. She's got a great job. My son's doing well. But that's always been the case. I'd never wanted them to rely on me for money, but I always wanted to make sure it was there for them. And, you know, to be successful as a father is important for the kids to see as well, to drive them in their own success. So from a role model perspective, definitely from a fiscal perspective, to give them a better life, that's always been a driver. So there's multiple things. There's ego as well. I always, you know, everybody's got an ego, let's be honest. I want to have a great company because I want to be able to have built it. I like the financial rewards from that. I like to live a good life. I've always wanted that as a kid. I never wanted to live without, like, I'd be the kid at the table with my dad when he's not looking. I'd be ordering the fillet steak and he'd be then clipping my wings when we got home. Like, I just always had a taste for expensive things. So when you've got a taste for expensive things, you need to make money to mirror that, because no one's going to pay for you, you know what I mean?
I mean, you've told us, you know, highlights, flashes, glimpses of being on yachts, you know, being at poker games where there's $1 million blinds, so forth. What would you say? And I've kind of got a story that I've heard briefly in the back of my head when I asked this question. It's kind of a preloaded question. But having Conor McGregor on your boat, and what happens when Conor McGregor, MMA fighter, UFC champion, is on your boat?
At the time, I believe Bugzy Malone come on as well. I think it was Bugzy, there was Conor, there was Michael Flatley, and there was Eddie Jordan, and we were just all sitting having a whiskey, having a chat. It was fun.
I love the way you say it so coolly. We were just there having a whiskey with Bugzy Malone, Eddie Jordan, Conor McGregor.
They're all good lads. We were having a good chat, just drinking good whiskey. So yeah, I mean, I've loads of different stories, to be honest, of things that have happened over the years. I think, you know, the virality that we had with Le Portier was a big one as well. That was huge. So obviously, outside of building Whiskey and Wealth Club, the purpose of originally building Whiskey and Wealth Club was to generate cash flow to allow me to build Craft Irish Whiskey Company, but also then to diversify into other drinks brands. And of course, I've invested into Primetime Lager, you know, Celosa Tequila, which is our rosé tequila, and Le Portier Cognac, which is by Shannon Sharpe, who's obviously a well-known podcaster. He's done phenomenal for himself. He's a Hall of Famer. And that was a really big moment in my career, was building out that cognac with him. And then seeing it go as viral as it did last year on the Cat Williams podcast. I think it's had like 90 million views or something like that. Like that was a big one, because it's just grown from strength to strength for us there.
And what made you get into the cognac then? Was it just opportunity, something that came across your door? And how did you meet Shannon Sharpe?
Yeah, so cognac is made very, very similar to whiskey. In fact, it's even more up my alley than even whiskey could be in a way, because in cognac in the region, a lot of the grapes are picked and then they're distilled on site by the farmers, and then the actual liquid itself, what looks like clear liquid, which is the eau de vie, so to speak, that's shipped to all the manufacturers to then put into barrel, and then they go through their blending process. So cognac is even more heavy on the blending than whiskey really is. And that's what I'm very good at, is when whiskey's in the barrel, moving it through barrels, understanding its maturation journey. That's kind of where my skill set comes in. So I knew I could do cognac and blend a good cognac. Now, where Shannon comes in was Shannon was doing a lot of stuff for Hennessy. And he wanted to kind of get an ambassador role. And he tells the story a lot better, but it didn't work out. And he wanted to do his own. Essentially, he didn't get the role that he wanted, even though he had millions and millions and millions of impressions for Hennessy. He got really nothing for it. And of course, you know, cognac is a big drink among the urban community in America. So, and he's a big face in that community. So when we had a chat about it, I said, look, what is the drink that you want to do? You obviously have been promoting Hennessy. He goes, well, if I do drink, you know, whenever I drink, it's cognac. It's got to be a good one. I said, well, look, if we're going to do this, we do it right. You get involved in the blending with me. You make sure that you know what it is, that it's going to be suited to your palate, because I know to make something that will suit my palate, we've got to get something that suits yours, that you think will suit your consumers. So we spent a long time all through lockdown. There was times where I'm shipping samples over to him in LA. We're getting on Zoom calls. I mean, we built this through lockdown when it was very hard. Then, of course, we finally got him down to cognac, down into the vineyards. There's great videos of the two of us down there doing blending in the barrel rooms. We're out in the vineyards where the grapes are made and everything, or the grapes are grown, should I say. And it was just one of those things where he was the right guy. I knew if I was going to do something with a celebrity, they had to be willing to get fully involved. They had to have a palate for it. And for him being on his podcast, I think it works, you know, bringing his cognac on the podcast, drinking it. And we've seen that obviously with Cat Williams. It's gone really well. But there's been so many other moments. I mean, Shannon's just a grafter. He's a hard worker. He's out there all the time doing the likes of Total Wine and Spirits. He's doing bottle signings. He's flying here, there, and everywhere to different restaurants. So he's just a great partner to have that works hard.
Obviously, when you go into the whiskey investment side, a lot of people, especially when it comes to any investment, Bitcoin, FX, all of these investments that people are doing, people get very, very critical about, cynical. So how do you deal with the controversy around the whiskey investments, and how controversial has it become for you over the years?
Yeah, that's definitely been controversial. Like whiskey investments, everybody will have their say, right? Like we deal with different distilleries around Scotland, Ireland, America, whatever it is. We purchase the whiskey, it goes in the barrel, it goes under storage and insurance, and they get their ownership in that. But people will always have their voice and say, oh well, this could be a scam, or this is this, and everybody has an opinion, right? They're not really involved in the day to day like we are. We've been doing it now for 7 years, and anyone that's ever bought whiskey off us received their whiskey, and not everybody's happy. People have their moments or their problems, or some people might want to sell it and it doesn't sell as fast as they'd want. You're always going to get problems when you're an entrepreneur and you're running companies, especially when it's in what may be deemed as an investment space, right? If people are buying something with the hope of it to go up in value, and then they're coming back to you in 5 years and they want your help selling it, you do the best that you possibly can, but you're not we're not contracted to have to do that for them. We do it because we want to offer that service. So for us, we try to stand out from everyone. Like I said, we are the biggest in that space, and we're around the longest. We've got the most customers. So we are doing everything that we can to service all those customers that want to maybe sell their cask 5 years later, or 6 years later, 7 years later. And there's a lot of controversy in that industry now, because I was the first one in, right? I really come up with that whole original concept. Now, I haven't been running Whiskey and Well Club for the last couple of years. I've been out doing all the other things, building Le Portier, building Craft Irish, building the brand side of the business. My business partner, Scott Skibberus, has really been running it. And yeah, a lot of things have happened, because when there's money to be made, for example, say we buy a cask of whiskey for 1,000 and we sell it to you for 2,000, right? You genuinely got that cask of whiskey. You got the ownership, the serial numbers, the whole lot. It's your cask of whiskey. Now, there's other people that are going and getting on the phone and doing the exact same model as us, but they're not selling anything. They're selling thin air. They're taking the whole 2,000 and they're not paying for the whiskey, right? So we pay the 1,000 for the whiskey, and that's happened. And there's a whole BBC documentary come out about this, and it's damaged the whole industry of late. It's a proper problem that's going on. So imagine you're competing with them, right? Because now they've got $2,000 to spend. You've only got $1,000 to spend because you're actually buying the whiskey. So they can outbid you on ads, right? They can outbid you on marketing. They're basically spanking, right? They're ripping people off. Now there's all these bad characters in your industry. These people that are giving a bad name for the industry because people have genuinely been ripped off. They found that they never got the cask. And you're trying to be the most honourable in that industry. So for us, early on, we knew this was happening. We seen people coming into the industry. So we tried to get the industry regulated. We applied with the FCA. We couldn't get it properly regulated. So what we did is we just became the most regulated that we could be. And we're basically to the level of FCA regulation in-house. Like, we'd financial crime officers in place, a whole financial crime program. We have compliance officers. Like, we did everything, all calls recorded, the whole lot, as tight as we possibly could be. We get audited by HMRC to make sure that the casks that we've sold are casks that are actually under maturation. So that's what we did to be able to give trust to the marketplace. But there's so many people that have, when there's an industry that's making money, you're just always going to get the bad actors, and it's unfortunate. So it is controversial at the moment. It's not really an industry that I've been involved in, like I said, for the last 2 years. I know it because I founded the company and I was in it for the first 4 years or so. But I know the problems that my business partners having with it. It's difficult.
What would you say if you were to meet a young entrepreneur today, or you were to have your kids come to you looking to start a business? What would be the best advice that you would give them? I mean, listening to you, listening to my other guests, what I see, which makes them money, is passion, right?
Yeah, you take the words out of my mouth. The first thing would be like, do you really want this? Because it's a tough job, right? It really is. You are the person at the top of the pyramid taking all the crap. Everybody's coming to you with their problems. So it's a very, very difficult job. It's lonely at the top because there's no one that you can really relate to. You have to have the ability to be an entrepreneur. Just to say you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to go learn sales and marketing. You have to do every job within the company and be able to do it better than anyone, or at least as good as anyone else, and then hire better people than you. You've got to be great at hiring. So there's a lot of things. So if someone came to me, the advice I usually give them is definitely what you just said, is that when I did all these other businesses in the past, a lot of them did fail, right? I've had a lot of failures. That's just part and parcel of being an entrepreneur is it's not always going to be successful. I left school at 14. I didn't come with an MBA. I ended up doing one many years later in life at nighttime. I ended up reading every business book and going to every seminar to get the knowledge. But most of the knowledge came from all my failures. And the most important thing was when I look back at why they were failures. The reason why they were failures was because I didn't really do them for the love of the product or the business. I did them to make money. And when I made the money, I got bored. And when I got bored, I got disinterested. When I was disinterested, my staff became disinterested. And when that happened, eventually it burns to the ground. There's nothing you can do to stop it. The culture dies out of the company. You start being more absent because you've lost your love, right? Because you never really had it in the first place. You did it for the money and then you made the money. So you have to do something that you would do for free. So I ask 3 questions. I say, look, if all things were equal, right? And we were paid the same amount of money for no matter what job we could do, no matter what you wanted to do. If you wanted to be a dustbin cleaner, or you were going to be an entrepreneur, or you were going to be making drinks, whatever it was, everyone only got 50 grand. That was it. You couldn't make any more or any less. What would you do? And then I asked people, what would you do for free? If there was no pay at all, what would you go and do every day for free if you had to pick a job? What would you pick? And then the next question I asked them is, what do you pay money to go do? Like for me at the time, I paid money to go on holidays to go drink whiskey or wine. I'd go to vineyards. That would be a vacation for me. I paid money to go and sample wine. So to me, I always knew that if I'm making wine or whiskey, I would do it for free no matter what. I'd always do this job even if there was no money to be made. So if there's no money to be made, I'm not going to burn it down or lose interest because I'm going to do it for free anyway. So that's what I would say to an entrepreneur is make sure it's something that you would do for free no matter what, and then make sure it's in an industry that you can make money in.
Some great advice, and yeah, absolutely amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on this. I mean, your story is fantastic, and I
appreciate it.
It's lovely to watch and see firsthand as well. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching Filthy Rich with me, Sam Vanderpump. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more episodes and exclusive content. For this podcast, search Vanderpod on all major audio streaming platforms. See you soon.